The kingdom of Arvath was one of whispered shadows and golden halls, where the air always seemed thick with secrets. Torches flickered along the stone corridors of the royal palace, casting shadows that stretched like silent watchers. Nobles in velvet cloaks and jeweled crowns whispered as they passed, their voices weaving webs of ambition and fear. At the center of it all sat King Dareth, the Alpha King, feared and admired in equal measure. Strong, clever, and unyielding, he commanded not only armies but the hearts and minds of the people. Yet even a king could feel the stirrings of curiosity, a longing he had not named until the day she arrived. She was called the Blind Omega, though her real name was unknown to most. No one truly knew her past, only that she had come from the distant province of Lyria, a land rumored to be touched by old magic. She could not see the world in the way others did, yet those who met her felt a strange sense of being truly seen. Her steps were certain, graceful, each movement deliberate as though guided by some invisible thread. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried a weight of understanding far beyond her years. The royal court had expected the usual spectacle when the Alpha King was to choose a consort. Rumors had flown for months. The nobles said he could choose any woman in the kingdom. Each of the richest and most beautiful women prepared themselves, hoping to capture his attention. Jewels sparkled, dresses flowed like waterfalls, and every noblewoman tried to outshine the next. But the Blind Omega entered without fanfare, without gold or silk, yet the air shifted. King Dareth was in the high hall when she stepped in. His eyes, sharp and calculating, immediately found her. Most would have dismissed her as fragile, unremarkable, but something about her calm presence, her quiet confidence, made him pause. She did not bow excessively. She did not try to impress. She simply walked with a steady heart and a steady mind, carrying herself as if she belonged not to the court, but to some higher purpose. Whispers ran through the hall like a sudden wind. "She is blind," one noblewoman hissed. What could a blind girl offer him? "Perhaps he wants amusement," another replied, lips curling. "Or he grows tired of predictable beauty." But Dareth did not answer. His gaze followed her, a mixture of intrigue and something deeper, something he had not allowed himself to feel in many years. The Blind Omega approached the center of the hall. Her hearing was keen. She could sense the shifting of emotions, the hidden envy and fear that lurked beneath the noble smiles. She did not flinch under the scrutiny, nor did she try to charm anyone. It was as if she knew the rules of the court, yet refused to bow entirely to them. Finally, she stopped a few steps away from the king's throne. Silence fell, heavy and expectant. The nobles leaned forward, waiting for Dareth to speak. Some expected mockery, others a polite dismissal. Instead, the king rose. His presence was magnetic, a force that drew the room's attention even as it terrified the courtiers. His voice, deep and commanding, broke the silence. "I claim her." The words hung in the air like a striking bell. Murmurs erupted. Women gasped, some turned pale. The nobles could barely believe their ears. To choose her, someone blind from a distant land unknown to the court, was unheard of. "She cannot see," a duke whispered. "She cannot fulfill the expectations of the throne." Dareth's eyes burned as he met the duke's. "Perhaps she will teach us what it means to truly see," he said. His voice left no room for argument. The Blind Omega had not yet spoken, and yet the entire court understood. Her fate was sealed by his decision. The Blind Omega tilted her head slightly, listening, sensing. She felt neither fear nor triumph. There was only a quiet understanding, an acknowledgement of the path that had opened before her. She had expected challenge, perhaps even danger, but she had not expected curiosity, the kind that did not seek to control her, but to discover. That evening, the palace was restless. The nobles whispered behind closed doors, plotting and speculating. How could the Alpha King choose someone so different from all others? What threat could she pose that made him so certain? Some thought it folly. Others wondered if Dareth had seen something the rest could not. Meanwhile, Dareth found himself restless in his private chambers. The Blind Omega had been brought to a small room near the throne, a simple space untouched by luxury yet sufficient. He watched from the doorway as she adjusted to the unfamiliar surroundings with remarkable ease. She did not stumble. She did not call for assistance. She simply moved, aware of the furniture, the walls, even the small flickering candle on the table. For a moment, Dareth felt a rare stirring of emotion. He had always believed that power and control were the only constants, yet here was someone who made him feel something new: anticipation, curiosity, and a tension that was entirely unfamiliar. He had known many women, many court intrigues, many alliances, but none had touched him like this. None had commanded respect and intrigue in equal measure. The blind Omega sensed him there, though she could not see. "You are quiet tonight," she said softly, her voice carrying a calm certainty. "Do you often watch those who enter your halls, or only the ones you cannot ignore?" Dareth's lips twitched into a faint, rare smile. "Few enter my halls, and fewer still command my attention without effort." Her tone was even, but there was a subtle challenge in it. "And what of me, King? Do I command attention, or do I disturb it?" "You do not disturb," he said carefully, stepping closer. "You unsettle it, in a way that makes me want to understand it." There was a pause, charged and electric, a moment suspended between two worlds. The court outside would never understand this connection, the quiet understanding, the tension, the unspoken challenge, but within these walls, something had begun. Days passed, and the court watched with growing concern as Dareth spent time with the blind Omega. He did not shower her with gifts or flatter her with hollow words. Instead, he engaged her in conversation, asked her questions others would never think to ask, and listened with a focus that unsettled even the most confident courtiers. The Omega, in turn, discovered her own influence. Though blind, she could read intentions, sense lies, and perceive truths that were hidden even from the most skilled courtiers. She realized that the king's claim on her was not just an act of authority, it was an invitation to a game she could play, if she chose wisely. One evening in the palace gardens under the silver glow of the moon, the court gathered for an outdoor feast. Lanterns swung gently in the breeze, casting golden circles on the cobblestone paths. Nobles laughed and whispered, their voices layered with intrigue and envy. Dareth and the blind Omega walked together side by side, drawing attention without even trying. The nobles' whispers were sharp, full of disbelief. "She cannot see," someone exclaimed. "Does he not realize what this will do to the throne?" But Dareth paid them no mind. The blind Omega's hand brushed against his arm, an accidental contact that sent a ripple of awareness through him. She spoke quietly, more to herself than to him. "I can feel the world even when I cannot see it." "Can you feel it too, King?" Dareth looked down at her, a flicker of vulnerability passing over his face before it was replaced by his usual calm authority. "Perhaps I am beginning to," he admitted. The night was full of tension, unspoken words, and the quiet acknowledgement that the ordinary rules of the court no longer applied. For the first time, the blind Omega felt truly alive, and Dareth felt something he had long thought lost: the pull of fascination and the stirrings of connection that were more powerful than fear or power alone. Yet as the lanterns swayed and shadows danced, a subtle danger lingered in the corners of the palace. Eyes watched from hidden doorways, and whispers hinted at plots forming, plots that could destroy the fragile bond beginning to grow between the king and the blind Omega. And in that moment, neither could know that the path ahead would be filled with trials far beyond the walls of the palace. Trials that would test their courage, their trust, and the very strength of the bond forming between them. The Alpha King had claimed the blind Omega, and the court had been silenced by the audacity of it. But in the silence of the night, beneath the flickering lanterns and shadows, both King and Omega felt the first tremors of a storm that would change the kingdom forever. The whispers outside the garden walls were growing louder, and some plots had already begun to move unseen. The question hung in the air, heavier than any crown. Who would survive the coming storm, and who would fall in love amid its darkness? The days in the palace grew heavier after King Dareth claimed the blind Omega. The courtiers could no longer hide their unease. Every whispered conversation, every sideways glance hinted at plans being made behind closed doors. Some wanted to undermine her, some wanted to discredit her, and a few secretly feared her influence over the Alpha King. But the king seemed unaffected by their schemes, or perhaps he was simply playing a game only he could understand. For her part, the blind Omega felt the tension like a pulse in the walls. Though she could not see, she could sense the court's plotting, the nervous energy of those who dared approach her. And yet she felt no fear. She had survived dangers in her distant homeland. relied on her instincts and keen senses, and discovered that power did not always lie in sight alone. King Dareth watched her carefully. He was a man accustomed to control, to having his will unchallenged. But with her he felt something new. He was intrigued, unsettled, and even drawn in ways he could not name. She challenged him without words, revealing truths he could not ignore. And he found himself both frustrated and fascinated by her. One afternoon, in the quiet of the royal library, the king approached her as she ran her fingers along the spines of the ancient books. The air smelled of dust and old parchment, a scent that seemed almost magical in its stillness. "You study every book as if it holds the world," Dareth said, his deep voice breaking the silence. She paused, sensing him near. "Perhaps it does," she replied softly. "Knowledge is a kind of sight too, is it not? One does not need eyes to understand the world." Dareth's eyes narrowed, a flicker of admiration crossing his face. Few speak with such certainty. Most are afraid of what they cannot see. "And few listen," she said. Her words were gentle but carried weight. "You, however, seem to listen carefully, even when it is inconvenient." He leaned against the tall bookshelf, watching her with an intensity she could feel. "You are not like the others," he admitted. "You do not seek my favor or attempt to flatter me, and yet you command it without effort." There was a pause, charged with unspoken meaning. Neither spoke, yet both were aware of the bond slowly forming between them. A bond built on respect, curiosity, and a growing, undeniable tension. But not everyone in the court was blind to their connection. Outside the library, whispers traveled quickly. Noblewomen glared with jealousy, noblemen with envy. A plan began to take shape among those who feared the blind Omega's influence. They would test her, threaten her, and perhaps even use the darkness of the palace itself to eliminate her before she could fully claim her place by the king's side. That evening, under the silver glow of the moon, the palace gardens became a stage for a more dangerous game. The king and the blind Omega walked together along the cobblestone paths, their steps quiet and deliberate. Lanterns swayed gently in the wind, casting golden circles on the ground, but shadows lingered in the corners, stretching and moving in ways that seemed unnatural. "You feel them, do you not?" Dareth asked, his voice low. "The eyes that watch us, the whispers that follow our steps?" She nodded, sensing the tension around them. "I feel them. They are afraid of what they cannot control." "They will try," he said, his tone hardening, "but I will not let them harm you." Her hand brushed against his arm, an almost accidental touch that sent a shiver through him. "I am not afraid," she said quietly. "I have faced danger before and I have survived. I can survive this too." Dareth's jaw tightened. He had spent years commanding armies, quelling rebellions, and asserting his authority over enemies. And yet, there was a fear he could not control. Fear for her, fear of losing her to schemes he could not anticipate. He realized that for the first time his strength was not enough. He needed trust and perhaps even Of that night, the palace was alive with murmurs and movement. Shadows shifted unnaturally along the corridors. Unseen hands tested locks and doors, and faint footsteps echoed in empty halls. Someone was plotting, someone determined to strike at the blind Omega before her influence grew too strong. Suddenly, a shadow moved near the garden's edge. Dareth noticed it before she did. With lightning speed, he reached for her, his hand gripping her wrist firmly, guiding her out of harm's way. A dagger glinted in the moonlight as it struck the stone where she had stood moments before. "You are safe," Dareth said, his voice low and dangerous, filled with a rage that few had ever heard from him. His eyes scanned the darkened garden, searching for the intruder. The threat had not passed entirely, but for now they were unharmed. The blind Omega looked up at him, sensing the fury in his presence. "You protect me as if I am fragile," she said softly. "But I am not fragile. I only need understanding." Dareth's grip on her wrist loosened, though his eyes never left the shadows. "You are not fragile," he said. "But the world does not see as you do. It will try to destroy what it cannot understand." Her hand found his, and for the first time, she let him feel the quiet strength she carried. "Then we will face it together," she said. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of conviction, of courage, and of a bond that was growing faster than either of them could have imagined. In the following days, the court's tension increased. Courtiers whispered of curses, old magic, and secrets long buried. The blind Omega began to sense a power within the palace, a darkness that was watching, waiting. She realized that the threat was not only from jealous nobles but from something older, something ancient tied to her lineage, a curse she had never fully understood until now. Dareth, aware of the growing danger, began to show a side of himself the court had never seen. He trained in secret, not only in the arts of war but in understanding the strange magic that surrounded the blind Omega. He wanted to protect her, to claim her not just as his consort, but as someone he could trust completely, someone who could see him as he truly was, even if she could not see with her eyes. One evening, a messenger arrived from the distant province of Lyria, bringing news that deepened the mystery. The letters spoke of hidden powers, of dangers lurking in the forests and mountains, and of enemies who had long sought to control the Omega for their own gain. The court trembled at the revelation, but Dareth's focus was singular. He would face these threats, whatever they were, to ensure she remained safe. The blind Omega, too, began to understand her own role in the unfolding events. She was not merely a pawn in the court's games. She possessed insight, intuition, and courage that could shape the outcome of the kingdom's future. And as she walked beside the Alpha King, she realized something she had never known before. That connection, trust and loyalty could be stronger than fear, sight or power alone. Yet even as they forged their bond, the shadows continued to gather. One night, in the quiet of the palace corridors, a figure moved with silent intent. A dagger, sharp and gleaming, was held ready to strike. The threat was near, and neither Dareth nor the blind Omega could know how close danger had come. In that instant, the king's protective instincts flared, and the Omega's courage shone brighter than ever. But the moment passed, leaving them both aware of the fragile balance between trust, love, and the ever-present danger that surrounded them. As the moon rose high above the palace, Dareth and the blind Omega stood together on the balcony, the wind carrying the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of whispers. Neither spoke, yet both felt the weight of the coming storm. The court would not yield easily, and old magic still lingered in the shadows. But in that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them, a promise, a challenge, and the first spark of a bond that could withstand the darkness ahead. And far below, in the corridors where shadows twisted and moved, a plan was already in motion. The next threat was closer than they realized, and it would test the Alpha King and the blind Omega in ways neither could yet imagine. The storm of danger, intrigue, and desire had begun, and the kingdom would never be the same again. Storm clouds had gathered over Arvath, darkening the skies and chilling the halls of the royal palace. The whispers of the court had turned into bold schemes, and shadows had grown bolder, carrying secrets older than the kingdom itself. King Dareth and the blind Omega had faced days of tension, but now the true test was upon them. Ancient magic stirred in the hidden corners of the palace, a force connected to her lineage, a curse that had long been dormant, waiting for this moment. The blind Omega had sensed it first. Even without sight, she felt the pulse of danger, the creeping energy that moved like a living thing through the stone walls and empty corridors. She turned to Dareth as he approached, his armor gleaming faintly in the lightning that flashed across the sky. "They are close," she said, her voice steady despite the storm around them. "The danger we have felt, it is not just the nobles. Something older awakens." Dareth's jaw tightened. His usual calm authority was tempered now by urgency. "Then we face it together," he replied. "Whatever comes, I will not let it touch you." For a long moment neither spoke. The air was heavy with anticipation, the kind that signals a change the world cannot yet understand. And then, as if the storm itself had chosen a moment, the first signs appeared, shadows twisting unnaturally along the walls, a cold wind that carried whispers of forgotten names and broken promises. The king took the blind Omega's hand, guiding her through the palace corridors with careful precision. He moved with a mixture of strength and caution, aware that danger could strike from any corner. She walked beside him with the same quiet certainty she had always possessed, sensing the layout of the palace, the unseen threats, and the subtle movements of those who lurked in the shadows. Their journey brought them to the old cathedral at the edge of the kingdom, a place long abandoned but saturated with ancient magic. Broken spires reached toward the stormy sky, and lightning revealed the jagged beauty of the ruins. It was here that the source of the curse awaited, and it was here that the king and Omega would face the ultimate test of their bond. As they stepped into the cathedral, The air felt charged, electric with a power neither had encountered before. The blind Omega stopped, sensing the weight of history pressing down on her. "This place, it remembers," she whispered. "It remembers pain, betrayal, and power misused." Dareth nodded, his hand tightening around hers. "And it will test us, but I will not fail you." The first challenge came swiftly. From the shadows, figures emerged. Agents of the curse, creatures of magic that had been bound to the cathedral centuries ago. Their forms were twisted and dark, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The king moved first, his sword flashing through the air, striking with precision and strength. The blind Omega stood beside him, her senses guiding him, warning him of attacks he could not yet see. Despite the danger, a strange harmony existed between them. His strength, her perception, combined in a way that was almost instinctual. Each move they made was synchronized, as though their bond had become a weapon stronger than any magic the curse could conjure. As the last of the shadowy figures fell, the cathedral grew quiet again. The storm outside raged on, but within the ruins a moment of stillness prevailed. The blind Omega turned to the king, her voice soft but resolute. "This is not the end. The curse. It is still alive, and it is tied to me. I cannot escape it alone." Dareth's eyes softened, revealing the rare vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to see. "Then you will not face it alone," he said. "I claimed you, and I will stand with you no matter what comes." For the first time, the blind Omega allowed herself to feel the depth of their connection. It was not simply trust or reliance. It was a bond of souls, a recognition of strength, courage, and understanding. She had been feared, underestimated, and dismissed her entire life, yet here she was, standing beside the Alpha King, equal in courage and purpose. The final trial of the curse revealed itself as a voice that echoed through the cathedral, ancient and commanding. "Who dares challenge what has been bound for centuries?" it demanded. Shadows swirled, forming the shape of a figure that seemed neither fully human nor fully spirit. Its presence radiated both menace and sorrow. Dareth stepped forward, placing himself protectively before the blind Omega. "I am King Dareth of Arvath," he declared, "and I will not allow you to harm her. Speak, or face the strength of my sword and the bond that ties us." The voice seemed to pause, as if measuring the courage in his words. Then slowly it spoke to the blind Omega alone. "Child of Lyria, you carry the legacy of power and pain. Will you accept your fate, or will you walk the path of your own choosing?" She felt the weight of centuries pressing upon her, yet she drew in a steady breath. "I will choose," she said clearly. "I will not be a prisoner of fear or curse. I will face the darkness, and I will survive." The ancient force recoiled slightly, as though surprised by her determination. Dareth placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "I will face it with you," he said. "Every step, every challenge, together." For hours they battled the remnants of the curse, confronting visions of fear, regret, and loss. The cathedral shook with the force of the magic, yet their bond only grew stronger. Where the king's strength met her insight, the curse faltered. Where her courage met his determination, the shadows could not endure. Finally, as the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the storm outside began to subside. The shadows that had haunted the cathedral dissipated, leaving only the quiet echo of old magic. The blind Omega and the king stood together, breathing heavily, their hands clasped as if to seal the victory not just over the curse, but over fear itself. Dareth looked down at her, his expression a mixture of awe and reverence. "You see things I cannot," he said softly. "Not with your eyes, but with your heart. And through you I have learned to see too." She smiled, a small radiant curve that lit the weariness from her face. "And I have learned that strength is not only in power, but in trust, in connection, and in courage shared." The palace would never understand the quiet transformation that had occurred. The Alpha King had faced his deepest fears, his own capacity for vulnerability, and had emerged changed. The blind Omega had claimed her place not through submission, but through insight, courage, and a bond that was stronger than any fear or curse. As they descended from the cathedral, the kingdom of Arvath stirred awake. The court would whisper, schemes would continue, but a new force had entered the kingdom's heart. It was a bond of respect, love, and shared strength, a force that no court intrigue, no ancient curse could undo. In the quiet moments of dawn, as the sun touched the palace towers, Dareth and the blind Omega stood together on the balcony. The wind carried the scent of rain and fresh beginnings, And for the first time in years, the Alpha King allowed himself to simply exist, not as a ruler, but as a man connected to another, equally strong and unbroken. Her hand found his again, and this time he did not merely protect her, he trusted her, leaned on her insight, and allowed their connection to guide them both. The storm had passed, but the memory of it lingered, a reminder that life in Arvath would never be simple, nor would their journey be without challenge, and yet, in that moment there was hope, there was strength, and there was love. A quiet, unshakable force that had been forged in the heart of darkness and shadow. The Alpha King and the blind Omega had faced the storm together, and though the kingdom of Arvath would continue to test them, neither would walk alone again. Their souls were bound, their courage shared, and their hearts, once wary and hidden, now beat in unison against the darkness that lingered beyond the walls. For in the end, it was not sight, power, or fear that defined them, but trust, understanding, and the courage to claim each other fully. Against every shadow, every whisper, and every ancient curse. The palace whispered still, but its tone had changed. A new era had begun, one where love and strength, courage and insight would guide the Alpha King and the blind Omega through the darkness that dared to challenge them.